I'm joined now by the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
So we have been in a moment where we're obviously seeing a lot of overreach by this administration, whether it relates to their foreign policy, whether it relates to economic factors. We have heard that given the fact that there's very little Congress is willing to do, very little the Republicans are willing to do to rein in their own president's overreach, that the onus falls on the states to actually step in. And that's exactly what you've done today. You've just broken some news. Can you explain what you just did?
Well, look, I just remind people the size of California. It's the size of 21 state populations combined, fifth largest economy in the world. We're the largest, and most folks listening perhaps don't know this, we're the largest manufacturing state in America, $412 billion of output. And put that in perspective, that's 41% greater than Texas and their manufacturing base. And so no state in America is more impacted by Trump's tariffs, Trump's tax increase, Trump's regressive de facto sales tax increase, and all the uncertainty that he's brought to bear to our markets, to our allies, to our relationships and trade and supply chains around the globe. And as a consequence of that, we're already starting to see the effects in my home state, not least of which today, the markets, your 401k was impacted, the NASDAQ dropping significantly. NVIDIA, a great California company, great American company, one of the dominant global companies, took a $5.5 billion charge related to some of the uncertainty, the toxic uncertainty coming from the Trump administration. And so we sued. This is our 15th lawsuit since Trump took himself back, or rather got back in office. And we see the Trump administration saying that he does not have the unilateral authority to impose these tariffs. And we think we're on very, very firm ground. And we used the frame around the major questions doctrine. I won't get into the details of it, except to say the Supreme Court recently adjudicated against the student loans from Biden and against Obama's Clean Power Plan on the major questions doctrine. And if they're going to be consistent using that framework, we feel very confident the lawsuit that we just advanced, that these tariffs simply are unlawful, and Congress never specifically called them out under what we call the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Can you talk about the fact that Trump had run his campaign largely predicated on this idea that he understood Americans' pain as it relates to the economy, as it related to rent and housing and high grocery prices and the cost of eggs? My God, how many times did we hear about the cost of eggs from the Trump campaign? And yet the first thing they opted to do once they actually had power, once they no longer needed everybody's votes because they already got what they needed from people, is to engage in a trade war, a doomed trade war that would immediately have the impact of raising costs for everybody while at the same time gutting everybody's 401ks, including, by the way, for people who need to draw from those programs now because, they're in that phase of their life where they're living off of that.
Yeah, it's complete betrayal. I mean, the focus more on Greenland than the cost of groceries. Of course, you listen to Trump, he discovered the word groceries. He keeps literally acting like he's rediscovered a word and he's introducing it to the American people. That's serious. That's how out of touch he is. He lied to people. Today, I did this, I announced this lawsuit today in the middle of one of the most densely populated Trump counties in the United States of America, in the heart of Central Valley, in the heart of one of the largest agricultural districts in America. I'll remind you, $48 billion a year comes out of the state of California in forestry, fishing, hunting, and agriculture. No other state, 150% larger than the next state, Texas. So no state's more impacted by this betrayal. No constituency's more impacted by this betrayal than the constituency that elected Donald Trump and got him back into office.
And in your discussions with those folks, look, I understand that if you're talking to, these liberal bastions, like I live in Los Angeles, it's clear where everybody stands on Donald Trump, but he swept into office with a bigger mandate than he had the first term. He had a true net positive approval rating and a majority in the popular vote. And so there are folks who did believe him in terms of what he was saying when he came into office. In your discussions with those people, the people who actually did support him, maybe he pulled off support from Joe Biden, or maybe these are folks who didn't support Trump the first go around. What have they been saying about the impacts that Trump's tariffs are going to have on them personally, their businesses, their trade, and so on?
I mean, they're devastated and they feel betrayed. That said, I think the deeper question is do you think they would vote for Trump again? And I think they might. And it's a deeper conversation we need to have as to why. But they're devastated because of the uncertainty. They're devastated because of the impacts of that uncertainty on their business. Let me be specific. I was at an almond farm today, and the impact to her farm, which is generational, is already being felt. And she said it may never come back to where it was because they're export dependent. Almonds, pistachio, and dairy in the state of California are export dependent, 43% exports in that space. And so the impacts are already being felt. Their suppliers, their relationships are already being frayed. People don't have confidence and trust. And they experienced, by the way, this back in Trump 1.0 as it relates to China and the retaliatory tariffs as it relates to the imports of California ag. And the fact is they've already had to diversify. China already diversified, that is. And so it's already been permanent. This is a death knell. And you add that to their retirement anxiety and the fact that we know they're going to come swoop in. And these are the districts with the highest percentage of people that are on Medicaid. In California, Medi-Cal. And they know what's coming next. So it's cultural, perhaps. Maybe that's the answer, more than it is economic. But right now, the economic realities are a body blow to these communities and these folks that voted for Trump.
I think what you said is so important because we're already seeing the Trump administration take steps to use federal funds, just like it did in the first term, to make the farmers whole who are going to be impacted by this trade war. But the reality is that that's just basically putting a Band-Aid on a massive wound right now. I mean, it's like chopping off somebody's leg and sticking a Band-Aid on it, because the reality is, to your exact point, other countries have had to diversify. And we saw Brazilian farmers, for example, see their exports explode because we've been here before, and those other countries knew that they had to find other avenues to get the foods that they needed. And so the U.S. farmers never did recover. And so if we become such an unreliable trading partner, it's going to get to the point where even if the tariffs are taken down at some untold point in the future, those other countries already found their customers, their exporters elsewhere. And so it's only going to keep getting worse and worse and worse for American farmers by virtue of the fact that, yeah, sure, Trump will throw you a few bucks to make you whole this year, but what are you going to do next year? What are you going to do the year after that and for the next 5 and 10 and 20 years? I mean, if this is not a death knell for the broader agriculture sector, I don't know what is.
And all the related industries that support it. We were with someone that runs small manufacturers, small warehouses, and the impacts of the supply chain and the relationships he has in North America, the relationships he has as it relates to the relationships specifically from Canada and Mexico. Remember, California is unique in terms of the outsized impact. We are disproportionately getting slammed by these tariffs because 44% of all of our imports come from 3 countries, China, Canada, and Mexico. And we're so integrated, particularly with Mexico and Canada on supply chains. I'll give you a proof point specific. In the southern border, in the Baja Cali region, which is that sort of super region near San Diego, you've got so much that's manufactured south of the border, and then the final assembly is done north of the border. I'm talking about automobiles. I'm talking about issues around aerospace and consumer electronics. It's so historically integrated, and those relationships took decades. I'm talking decades to build, and he's destroying them in real time. But he's destroying the most important commodity, the coin of the realm, and that's trust. And that, even if he undoes these tariffs, to your point, there's permanent damage here to the reputation, brand America. And that's why this is code red. That's why I'm proud that we're the first state to assert ourselves on this macroeconomic level. And then on the subnational level, you may have seen just a few days ago, we're doing outreach, investing about $5.2 million in Canada to do outreach to our friends in Canada. 2 million Canadians visited California last year. And we're making the point, we're not Florida. We're not Donald Trump's America. We're the state of California. We're 2,000 miles away from D.C. We're 1,000,000 miles away in terms of mindset and approach and in terms of our relationship. We're dusting off memorandums of understanding, meeting with foreign leaders, meeting with ambassadors of other countries, and making the case we're a stable and reliable partner. And I think all Democratic governors in every Democratic state, we need to align at this critical moment, because what you said on the outset is the fundamental point. Where the hell is Congress? Where the hell is Speaker Johnson? Where the hell is the system of checks and balances, where we're going to celebrate the 250th anniversary, the founding of our nation? And it was about three independent branches of government. We can get to the rule of law and the courts in a second, but this is the greatest vandalism in the history of our republic and the history of our democracy. And it is time for us to exponentially step up and push back.
Perfectly put. And I do want to dig into exactly that, because to the point of where is Congress asserting its autonomy, and we have the other branch, the judicial branch, is pushing back against this administration. The fact is that the Trump administration is opting to defy right now a 9-0 unanimous Supreme Court ruling that ordered Kilmar Abrego Garcia to be returned back to the United States. And yet I think the Trump administration views this specific case as a metaphor for their broader immigration fight. And so they know that if they relent to a lawful order handed down, lawful ruling handed down by the Supreme Court, that this is them somehow conceding defeat in their broader immigration fight. And so they're allowing this to be the test case. And so can I have your reaction to the fact that right now, I mean, I would contend that we have been in a constitutional crisis for a long time. Legally speaking, a constitutional crisis would occur when you have a ruling handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court and the executive branch opts not to comply. And so we're effectively there right now. Can I have your reaction to the fact that Trump is basically discarding the will of the other two co-equal branches of government to assert himself as this all-powerful deity in the United States?
Well, you said two things, and you said it brilliantly. Number one, this is the perfect test case for them, right? This is the perfect distraction. First of all, let's get back to the issue. This is a disgrace. This is foundational, the rule of law. This is the cornerstone of what makes America, America. To defy a federal judge's order, to be in contempt, where there seems to be in basis of the federal judge today, saying there's predominance of evidence to suggest he is in criminal contempt, the administration of a court order. I mean, again, you're miles on the other side of the red line in terms of what this country is foundationally stood upon. And it's that three-legged stool that you refer to. The founding fathers did not live and die for this moment. And so if you want this democracy, this democratic republic to survive, that has to be called out with clarity and conviction, period, full stop. But you made a second point, or your earlier point, which is they do think this is a broader distraction, and they think it's the perfect argument for Democrats to get trapped into because it goes to the immigration issue. And then somehow we're, quote unquote, defending someone where they have not provided any evidence, is a member of MS-13, and somehow it gets all caught into that and conflated into that broader issue of him being tough on crime, tough on immigration. And so I think you're right. That's why they on this one are being even more defiant than they normally would be. But these are not normal times, so we have to call it out with clarity and conviction. But this is part of what we have to do and not get distracted with distractions and focus on what is essential. This is essential. But we got to stay focused on it so the American people can stay focused on it, because his success is his ability to win every damn news cycle and to get us distracted and moving in 25 different directions and to be overwhelmed by everything that's coming at us 24/7. On this, we have to maintain our vigilance, focus, and our energy. And this has to be the issue that, I mean, there's no margin on this issue. There's right and wrong, daylight and darkness. This is foundational to the rule of law and what this country stands for. And it needs to be called out, and we need to be consistent about it.
I want to move in a little bit of a different direction here. I know that there's been a lot of topic on Ezra Klein's book, Abundance. And at the heart of this was this idea that when we have a state like California, which is run by Democrats, for people to continue to have faith in the party more broadly, we want to make sure that that the programs that we're putting forward actually work. Give people a reason that yes, you've elected Democrats, but to continue electing Democrats, to know that Democratic policies can actually come to bear. And so, can I have your reaction to? I know that high-speed rail, for example, was a major source of consternation. It was a major topic of that book itself because we started with this pie in the sky idea of LA to San Francisco, that kind of already winnowed down a bit from Merced to Bakersfield, and even then continues to go over budget. The process continues to go slow. And so where do we stand on that issue, but more broadly, the ability of California, which is largely a Democratic state, to be able to deliver for folks so that they have faith in their leaders, and that it doesn't just become a party where you elect Democrats because they're not this terrible party of Republicans, but because they can actually get something done.
Well, so a couple points. I had Ezra on my podcast for an hour. We discussed the book in detail. And I think it's, first of all, I love the book and I love the framework, and I couldn't agree with it more. We got to get our act together. We got to deliver. It's not process. We're consumed by process. The world we invented is competing against us. And it's not just the world we invented. What I had to remind Ezra is a lot of the issues, the rules and regulations that he attached to the stress and frustration that is the high-speed rail, that goes back decades in California. So I want to remind people of that as well. There's been batons to 3 administrations that have been passed on that project. A lot of those were invented and supported by Republicans, going back to Ronald Reagan and, interestingly, Nixon himself, as it relates to some of the rules that he imposed federally that are impacting that project. But I also want to make a point, and I think it needs to be made. 71% of the GDP in the United States of America emanates from blue counties. California is a donor state, $83.1 billion a year. By the way, Texas takes $71.1 billion. We have more scientists, engineers, more Nobel laureates, more researchers than any state in America. We convey more talent than any state in America. The UC, CSUs, and community college. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. 18% of the world's R&D emanates from California. More unicorn companies. Those are companies, private companies worth over $1 billion. There's so much right about this state because of progressive governing principles and policies as well. And I want to remind people of that. We're also the center of innovation and entrepreneurialism and AI and discovery, and pushing out the boundaries of that discovery every day in terms of our institutes of higher learning and our research facilities. But housing and regulation and NIMBYism has gotten in our way. Affordability is the original damn sin. And that's why I've signed 42 CEQA reform bills. That's why I completely align with Ezra on blowing through all these regulatory thickets. And I think this is a call to arms as Democrats and progressives, particularly on low carbon green growth. You're not going to transition from an all fossil fuel framework unless we can build and go big, particularly on green energy. And that is an area we have been very aggressive and will continue to be. A final thing, we're laying damn tracks later this year on high-speed rail. We got 2,270 parcels now behind us. We got all those lawsuits done. We finished all the environmental work. So all that nonsense is behind us in a rear view. And now we're finally moving forward. The first high-speed rail system of its type anywhere in the United States and America.
And finally, Governor, let's finish off with this. I'm obviously here in Los Angeles, and I this is a smaller issue than the big issues that we've been talking about. But I don't want to do a disservice to the city that I live in by not asking about this, and that is that the entertainment industry here in LA has largely been gutted, and I think it's the result of the fact that a lot of other states wanted to lure our industry into their states. And we've seen that happen in Georgia, with Atlanta has a booming entertainment industry, in New York, in New Mexico, in Louisiana, even in Canada, especially Canada. We have Toronto and Vancouver have become major destinations for the entertainment industry. So where do we stand in terms of bringing the industry back? Because there are full sound stages in what were once booming studio lots and that are completely empty right now. And I have friends in my own circles who have left the state and in some instances left the country to find work where there is more work. And so in terms of both bringing this industry back to LA that has really served as the basis for its appeal. I mean, this is I came here 15 years ago. There's a ton of magic in this city, and it's largely owed to the fact that this is the cultural hub of America, the cultural hub of the world in large part, and that's largely dissipated now in deference deference to other states. So in terms of bringing that back and specifically getting not just tax credits to try and lure it back, but doing something big and really taking a big swing to restore the industry back into this state.
Well, and look, back to my frame, the world we invented is competing against us. I mean, we're the entertainment capital of the world.
Okay.
And you're right. Everybody else started to realize success leaves clues, and they started competing with us. And,
Right.
and they started to induce these big, major tax incentives in their states to offset the costs of large productions. And Georgia is really the poster child for that. And I applaud them for being as aggressive as they have been. And they invest heavily in this space. New York, you mentioned New Mexico, and some of these countries, and we didn't even get to the UK and others. New Zealand in the past has been very aggressive, and other parts of the globe continue to be aggressive. So, as you know, recently, I decided, look, in despite of all the economic uncertainty, all the headwinds of Trump and Trumpism and these tariffs, everything else, we're not going to play in the margins anymore. And so we're taking a big swing, and we're all in the next 90 days. We're going to get it done to double our film tax credit, to make adjustments, because again, to your point, it's not just about the tax credit, it's the how we actually apply the tax credit. We just announced 51, the largest number of grants we've ever provided in this state for production. And it's about people like you. It's about the folks, it's the carpenters, it's the caterers, it's the folks that are doing the set design, it's the ecosystem, it's the supply chain. And it's so ingrained in who we are. And so the legislature, I've asked them, it's a big ask. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars over the next decade that we're asking. And it's part and parcel of a broader effort. There's a marketing effort. There's a larger campaign. There's more organized, intentional focus with the studios and others and the unions, which are critical in this effort. The Teamsters are critical. IATSE and other unions are critical in this endeavor. But look, we sent a strong signal to Hollywood, broadly described Hollywood, LA, the film industry, that they matter and we care. And we're going to step up in a way that no other state in America will, except, I submit, I acknowledge, Georgia has. They will be our one last big target. That's step 2 in this multi-year effort to get filming back to California.
Well, step 1 will be will definitely be welcome. So, Governor, look, back to the broader question that we've been talking about. I appreciate you taking this fight to the Trump administration. That's something that I've if there's one through line with everything I do right now, it's finding folks and platforming folks who spotlighting folks who are looking to fight back, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time today.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.